Honorable Dean Sir, respected other faculty members of Parallel Institute of Commerce, distinguished student participants, distinguished faculty and students from other colleges, a very good afternoon to one and all present here. It's my immense pleasure to welcome you all for a webinar on sampling technique organized by Parallel Institute of Commerce. The research methodology is the core of research thesis, and hence, research design needs to be drafted correctly, accurately, carefully, and meticulously. With this objective, Parallel Institute of Commerce has arranged webinar which shines light on sampling technique. I take this opportunity to welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. N. Lakshmi, Head and Associate Professor in Commerce from Sri GVG Visalakshi College for Women, Tamil Nadu. She has completed her PG and MPhil from Bardar University. Later on, she pursued her PhD degree from Pondicherry University. She has 32 years of teaching experience and has a lot of academic contribution towards innovation in curriculum design, research activities, awards, and recognition. She also received Best Performing Institutional Award for College and the Visakha program organized by MHRD. On the whole, she received 9 awards and recognition, out of which she recently received Innovative Ambassador Award IIC MHRD New Delhi in the year 2021. She also published 22 research articles in a journal and 7 research articles in conference proceedings. She also organized more than 75 events in the form of seminar, conference, workshop, and guest lecture. We can say she has uplifted the lives of many students with the light of education. Once again, I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, the stage is yours. You can start your presentation, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you very much. I am extremely thankful to the Parul management for permitting me to be the resource person. And I am also thankful to all the participants who are there waiting here to get enlightened on sampling techniques. Let me go into the topic directly because I have only 1 hour to complete the topic. Sampling technique comes under statistical methods and it is used in research methodology to carry out research. This topic is very important because if something goes wrong in the selection of the sampling, the entire purpose of research will be jeopardized. So we have to see 2 principles relating to sampling technique. Principle of statistical regularity means moderately large number of items has to be chosen at random from a large group to ensure that population characteristics is represented in the sample. Second principle is inertia, principle of inertia. Though the number is large, it has to be corollary to statistical regularity. That is, the size of the sample ensures accuracy of the result. So these 2 principles have to be maintained when we are going to take up statistical techniques. Next, we need to know about certain concepts before we go into the depth. One is population. Population refers to the group of people or object which forms the subject of the study. Everything has to be similar in 1 or more ways. Second element is the word element itself. When we mean sampling element, it refers to single member of the population. Next, source list. It can also be called as a frame or a sampling frame or list of sampling unit. All the 4 means the same thing. It refers to the complete list of all the elements of the population. It might be in terms of names, objects, or anything else. If the source is not available, researcher has to prepare it. While the resource list is prepared, it has to be ensured that it is comprehensive, correct, reliable, and appropriate. If these four assurances is not there in the source list, there itself the problem will start. Result outcome cannot be accurate or good. Then the source list has to be representative of the population. That is the characteristics of the population should in no way be disturbed. Next concept is sample.
Ma'am?
Yes?
Ma'am, your presentation is not shown, ma'am.
Mine shows us sharing.
Ma'am, only the first slide is. Okay. Now it's okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So next is sample. Next is sample. A part or a subset of the population we call as a sample. What is sampling unit? It is a single member of the sample. So from population, source list has to be prepared. From source list, we are selecting the sample, and each unit of the sample is called as a sampling unit. All these things need to be done before we select the sample. That is why we are learning about it before we know about sampling technique. The sample unit can be geographical, like a state, a district, a village, or a construction unit, like house, flat, or a social unit, a family, a club, or a school, or an individual. Researcher will have to decide how the sampling unit is going to be taken up. So next is sampling. The process of selecting the elements of the population to carry out the study is called as sampling. Now we have one more word called as census or complete enumeration, which refers to all the elements of the population. If we are able to study all the elements, then we call it as complete enumeration survey. But in reality, it is not possible. So we study a part of the population, and that we call as the size of the sample. So size of the sample refers to the number of items to be selected from the universe which constitute a sample. It might neither be excessively large nor too small. Size has to be optimum. The requirements of efficiency, representativeness, reliability, and flexibility has to be ensured when we decide the size of the sample. Another important thing is the variance existing in the population. If the variance in the population is very high, you have to have a larger sample. When the variance is less, you can have a small size of the sample. Another parameter what we need to know about is parameter of interest. That is why we want to study. What is that we want to study? These things also determines the size of the sample. Ultimately, cost. The amount what we are ready to spend to collect the data and to carry out the analysis. Now, it is finally the researcher who has to determine the size of the sample and the extent of confidence level that need to be maintained.
Ma'am, all right, ma'am.
Yes?
Ma'am, again, உங்களோட ஸ்க்ரீன் வந்து ஷேர் ஆகலாம். அதாவது லாஸ்ட் நீங்க என்ன ஸ்லைட்ல இருந்தீங்களோ அந்த ஸ்லைட்ல இருக்கணும். பெட்டர் நீங்க ஸ்லைட் ஷோல ஃப்ரம் கரண்ட் ஸ்லைட்னு கொடுத்துட்டீங்கன்னா இப்போ ஷோ ஆகுது. ஓகே,
ஐ திங்க் இப்படி இருந்ததா தெரியுது இல்லையா?
ஆமா மேம்.
ஓகே,
Thank you, ma'am.
So next is design of the sample survey. As I just pointed out, if we are going to have a complete enumeration, we call that as census survey. So here it is the universe or the population which is going to be studied. There is no question of chance at all. Everything is taken into consideration. So the accuracy is also very high. But as I said already, in practice, this may not be true, not possible. Even a slightest element of bias will get increased with the increase in the observation. So we need great amount of time, money, and energy when we are going for the census survey. Again, another problem is when the population is infinite. When we mean infinite, we are not able to tell the numbers. For example, consumers of talcum powder, we cannot say the exact number, and not desirable. For example, crackers, you cannot test each and every cracker. So in this situation, we don't have any other go but to go for sample survey. So in the sample, as we have seen, we are going to select only few items. And it is not possible to examine every item in the population, as we have seen. We will not get complete accuracy, but sufficient accuracy will be able to get in. And there is no need for sampling when the universe is small. What we need to consider is the field of study, time, and cost. So, the representation of the population whom we are going to approach is called as a respondent. All the respondents put together will constitute the sample. The process of selecting the respondents is called as a sampling technique. And the method of survey we call as sample survey. So I think we are going in the proper track. So now the population size is statistically defined as capital N and the sample size as small n. The rule is sample should have the characteristics of the population. There cannot be any sacrifice in this. The way in which we are going to plan how a sample is going to be selected and what size is what we call as sample design of the study. So now, as we have seen, sample design is a definite plan. Plan means that is being framed before involving the work. Then this plan is relating to the selection of the sample from a given population. The procedure is otherwise called as the sampling technique. That is, the researcher is going to adopt a particular methodology in selecting the items for the sample. Now, you have to determine the number of items to be included. This has to be done before data is being started to be collected. The researcher has to prepare a sample design which is reliable and appropriate for the research work. So the sample design for one research work is not 100% applicable for the other one. The method of selecting a sample is of fundamental importance, and it depends on the nature of the data and the type of investigation we are going to take up. So based on all the prior knowledge relating to sampling, we are going to classify sampling. We can classify sampling design on two bases. One is representation basis and the other one is element selection technique. When we mean representation basis, we have two types: probability sampling, non-probability sampling. When an element of randomness that is chance, is there in the selection of the sample, then it is probability sampling. When there is no element of randomness or chance, we call that as non-probability sampling. And based on element selection technique, we have two types. Unrestricted sampling. That is, there is no restriction. So each sample element is drawn individually from the population at large without any condition. Another one is restricted sampling, where based on certain restrictions, guidelines, we will be making up the selection. Now, all the sampling techniques are a combination of these two sampling design. So, the sampling techniques can be reclassified on these element selection technique basis and representation basis. I have taken element selection technique as a row caption stub and the representation basis as the captions. So you have a combination of unrestricted sampling with probability sampling will give the technique of simple random sampling. So a simple random sampling has the characteristics of unrestricted sampling selection and also the probability of chance, randomness. That is why we call as simple random sampling. Under the combination of restricted sampling and probability sampling, we have complex random sampling. Under that, we have cluster sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling. Three main categories. Under the unrestricted sampling and non-probability sampling, we have haphazard sampling, convenience sampling. Both are more or less one and the same, but with minor difference in the meaning. Under restricted sampling and non-probability sampling, we have purposive sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling, and others. Main thing is purposive and judgment sampling. Let us see these in detail. Am I audible? Any clarification?
Ma'am, audible, ma'am, audible.
Thank you. So let us take the first one, probability, random, or chance sampling. All the three one and the same. Some books will call as probability sampling, some call as random sampling, some call as chance sampling. But all the three are one and the same. Here, the main element is every item of the universe has an equal chance of inclusion in the sample. You can adopt lottery method. Lottery method means writing, for example, if you are going to call someone to the dais, put all the names written in a paper, make a mixing of it and ask one to draw the item out. That is lottery method. Another one is blind chance alone determines. No condition, no basis, anything, just like that. The results assured in terms of probability will enable measurement of errors of estimation. That is possible. The random sampling ensures the law of statistical regularity, which we have seen already. The random sampling is the best technique of selecting a representative sample because it will reduce bias. So under the combination, we have first a simple random sampling. As we have seen, it is a combination of unrestricted sampling and probability sampling. Here again, we have two situations. One is when the population is finite, like the number of people in a factory, number of students in a college is a finite population. Now we have all the elements of the population being listed. You can have two methods of sampling there again, without replacement, with replacement. Usually we follow without replacement. That means the sample that is drawn out is not eligible for reselection, then it is without replacement. If the sample is drawn out and again put into the lot to be eligible for second and third and subsequent selection, then it will be sampling with replacement that is used very less frequently. The implication of simple random sampling is equal probability of getting into the sample. All choices are independent of one another. Each is possible of sample combination and equal probability of being chosen. Statistically, for a finite population, simple random sampling can be defined like this: capital N, C, small n. As we have seen already, capital N refers to the population size, C refers to the chance, and small n refers to the sample size. Next is how to select a random sample. You can use a random lottery method, what I've already told you, like using a bowl where all the elements are put, or a drum which is being rotated, or any other device can be used. You have another thing called as random number tables. Statisticians like Tippett, Aids, Fishers have given random numbers which you can use for both without replacement and with replacement. I've already explained about with and without replacement already. So next is random sample from an infinite universe, as in the case of consumers. Students, not a particular college, just students in general. It is very, very difficult to determine the size of it. So it is relatively difficult to adopt. So we go for a complex random sampling design where probability sampling and a restricted sampling technique is being adopted. So it is a mixed sampling design. It is a combination of probability and non-probability sampling procedure. And this complex random sampling design, we have systematic sampling. Systematic means a regularity is there. So here, the entire population is arranged in a particular order. This has to be followed. After that, we have to select the first item on a random basis. We are using random numbers or lottery method or any other method. Then, most practically, we will select every item on the list. For example, if I am going to take a systematic sampling for my college students, I will have a list of students of the entire college. First item I will be selecting on a random basis. Say I am selecting the 15th item. After that, I am going to select at an interval of 50. So, first candidate will be 15 with registered number. Next will be 15 plus 50, 65th student. Then again 65 plus 15, 115th student. Like that I will be selecting. Then we call that as systematic sampling. So, randomness is applicable only in the selection of the first unit or the starting unit. In that case, the intervals has to be fixed, as I said already. Now, the sampling interval we measure in the name of K statistically, which is equal to size of the population divided by the size of the sample. That will be the interval. For example, if the population size is 1000 and if the sample is going to be 100, K will be 10. So some of the plus points is, it is an improvement over simple random sampling. It is spread evenly over the entire population. It is less costly, convenient also. So the outcome of systematic sampling is more or less equal to random sampling. That is the superiority of it. But if the population itself has a hidden periodicity, some characteristics are periodical, then our decision will go wrong. So the population characters need to be studied before selecting the sampling method. And the list of population has to be available and it should be considerably lengthy, like 2000, 5000, like that. Second method is stratified random sampling. Here, it is suitable for population which does not constitute a homogeneous group. That means the entire population is not alike. So in which case we divide into subpopulation which is homogeneous. So each strata will be homogeneous in itself but differ from the other strata. That is why it is mutually exclusive. And the selection of items from each strata will constitute the sample. So it gives a more precise estimate for each stratum and better estimate of the whole. Results are more reliable and detailed information can be received. But we have to give importance for 3 questions. Only then stratified sampling will be successful. One is how to form strata. That is the common characteristics of items that should be there in each strata. If mistake is done in this, again outcome will be affected. Second is how should items be selected from each stratum. The selection methodology of the sample. That has to be clear. How many items to be selected from each stratum or how to allocate the sample size of each stratum. That again need to be determined. If the answers to 3 questions is correct, then stratified sampling will give you better results. So the method of proportional allocation can be adopted for the 3rd question. That is 10% of each stratum size, like that. That will be a better representation. Third one is cluster sampling. Cluster means group. So here the entire population is divided into various groups, clusters. Element within clusters are heterogeneous and between clusters are homogeneous. This is the opposite of stratified random sampling. The total area of interest happens to be a big one. So the area is divided into number of smaller non-overlapping areas and randomly small areas called clusters are selected. We have seen that clusters are homogeneous between clusters and heterogeneous. So the population representation will be there. So the sample consisting of units from all clusters can be selected. This will reduce cost and precision will be lesser than random sampling. If you are able to have a lesser precision than random sampling, then we can go for cluster sampling, provided the population is of various clusters and elements within clusters are heterogeneous and between clusters are homogeneous. So estimates based on cluster sample are usually more reliable. Next is area sampling. If clusters happen to be some geographical subdivision, the cluster sampling is better than known as area sampling. We are renaming cluster sampling itself as area sampling when the clustering is on the basis of geographical subdivision. That's all. Multi-stage sampling. Here, it is developed on the basis of cluster sampling. Large number of units can be sampled for a given cost because of sequential clustering. It is easier to administer. Sampling with probability proportional to size could be taken. Use random selection process is possible. The size of the sample can be proportionate to the size of the cluster. Number of elements can be listed in each cluster. Sample is systematically selected and the results will be equivalent to simple random sampling. All these things have to be followed to ensure an equivalent output to the simple random sampling. Next one is sequential sampling. The ultimate size of the sample under this technique is not fixed in advance. That is, we start, we follow a sequence, and once everything is completed, when the required information is yielded as per the survey progress, we will stop. This method is adopted in statistical quality control when we want to maintain the quality. Till we reach the quality, we'll be carrying out the testing. So a particular lot is to be accepted or rejected on the basis of a single sample, then we call that as single sampling. If it is on the basis of two samples, we call that as double sampling. If it is on the basis of more than two samples, we call that as multiple sampling. When the number of samples is more than two, but it is neither certain nor decided in advance, it is called as sequential sampling. I think now you are able to get the information. More than two, neither certain nor decided in advance, we reach the sequential sampling. We resort to simple random sampling because the bias is generally eliminated and sampling error can be estimated. At the end, I will tell you what is sampling error. Purposive sampling is considered more appropriate when the universe happens to be small and the characteristics are known to be studied intensively. So far what we have seen relates to probability sampling and the various types of probability sampling. Next is non-probability sampling, where chance is not there, randomness is not there. We does not afford any basis for estimating the probability. Personal element has a great chance in the selection of the sample. Investigators select a sample that will yield favorable results and the entire inquiry will get vitiated. If there is a danger of bias entering into the type of sampling, then we call that as non-probability sampling. These are some of the characteristics in the case of non-probability sampling. We can call non-probability sampling in three different ways: deliberate sampling, purposive sampling, judgment sampling. There is minor difference between purposive and judgment sampling. Few authors alone bring out deliberate sampling. Many don't bring out deliberate sampling. They suggest only purposive sampling and judgment sampling. Deliberate means purposeful. The results will be reliable when investigators are impartial, work without bias, have necessary experience to take sound judgment. So here, the expertise of the researcher is very, very important. There is no assurance that every element will have a chance of being inclusion because it is deliberately selected, not on a random basis or a chance basis. Since there is no randomness, sampling error cannot be estimated. So this is very rarely adopted, particularly in large inquiries of importance, like police inquiry relating to criminal cases and other things. There alone we adopt deliberate sampling, cybercrime problem and other things. Relative advantage of time and money is inherent in this method, particularly when the sample inquiry is going to be small. Items for the sample are selected deliberately by the researcher. That is the ultimate point to be kept in mind. His choice concerning the items will remain the supreme. The next one is purposive sampling or judgment sampling. I have combined because there is a very small deviation. Then you are going to select a sample based on your purpose of your study. Then it is called as purposive sampling. Like you are going to study people below poverty line relating to their savings and investment pattern. Then in which case you can select BPL families from few towns or villages where you can carry out an intensive study. I think you have a place, village near you, Mavlonong, which is identified as the cleanest village at the world level. So this can be there. There you have the facility of homestay, which other tourist spot doesn't provide. So you can have a study of people willing to take up homestay in Mavlonong. Then it is a purposive sampling. We are restricting to Mavlonong. We are restricting to people who are staying there and who have been come as a visitors and identifying their satisfaction. So such type of sampling is called as purposive sampling. Next is judgment sampling. In this case, the expertise of the researcher is very, very important. Like it can be people with the diabetes. You are judging on the basis of the blood group. Many categories are there. You can take one category and from then you can go for your sampling. Or it can be shoppers of a locality can be approached to identify customers who can be studied. For example, if a Hindustan Lever is going to carry out a study, they can approach the shoppers, dealers of their product and ask them to tell who are the customers who are regularly buying. Then you can study, make a loyalty-based study, brand loyalty study. That type of sampling is called as judgment sampling. Next is convenience sampling. This, as the name tells, convenience is the only thing. So, the results might not be very correct. There is always a doubt with regard to the output and the result with regard to convenience sampling, because we obtain information quickly, inexpensively, and it is the researcher who selects the sampling unit. That if this method will have a problem, if the population parameter, that is otherwise the population value and the sample value are called as statistic, is unknown in terms of magnitude and direction. Parameter and statistic or statistical terminology simply meaning the difference between population value and sample value. If you are able to identify, then, excuse me, இல்ல charge. So if is unknown and in terms of magnitude and direction is also difficult, then we can go for convenience sampling. This is very common in the case of exploratory research, exploring new things, where uncertainty is more than certainty. This gain insight into the problem. It will help us to generate a new set of hypotheses which could be tested with the help of a conclusive research. So convenience sampling is best suggested only in the case of an exploratory research where what we know is less than what we don't know, or unknown is more, uncertainty is more. Next is quota sampling. So quota means assigning a quantity for each area or group or subgroup. So minimum number from each specified subgroup in the population will be studied. Interviewer simply gives the quotas to be filled from different strata with some restrictions on how they have to be filled. So how to be filled is alone given. Number is given. It is up to the person who is commissioned to select the sample. So it is very convenient and relatively inexpensive. But the sample in many cases will not possess the characteristics of randomness. It is essentially a judgment sampling, and inferences drawn are not amenable to statistical treatment in a formal way. Next and the last method is snowballing technique. This is a recent development which is not been there in many of the statistical books, but one of the good things when the study is something entirely different, like difficult to identify the members of the desired population. You are not able to identify the population. Example, deep sea divers, families with triplets, three children, or it can be a particular ailment, like that. So each respondent, after interviewing, is being asked to provide support by way of referring other potential persons of the same category. Like for example, if you are going to study families with triplets, you are able to identify one triplet family, you approach them, carry out the interview, then ask them whether they know any other families with triplets. Like that, you go on adding. Like, as the name tells, when a snowball rolls down the mountain of ice, the ball will become bigger. In the same way, you start at one point, expand your interview further and further. That is why this method is called as snowballing technique. So it is a useful sample when the population is unknown. Like presently, the families which have solar energy, solar lighting in their house is less. So this can be adopted. Snowballing can be adopted in this case. Or in the case of cyber crime also. Police department also adopts the snowballing sampling. So there is a problem in initial contact. Identifying the first set of people is very, very difficult. Then it will help you to identify more members of the population. It is difficult to get a representative sample. We cannot say that the sample what we have collected will give the characteristics of the population. That drawback is always there. So let us see the difference between sample survey and census survey. Already I told you in the beginning, census survey means complete enumeration. Now this is being done when the study is very serious in nature. Information is required about each and every sampling unit. Money and time is not a factor at all, important at all. Population is not so large, and it will provide better results than any sample survey, provided it is carried out efficiently and by trained staff. Like where we carry out in India once in 10 years population census survey. That is the only thing mainly carried out. But there again, there has been a lot of mistakes and shortfalls, and now the government is going for digital, where the mistakes might be reduced. So the opposite of it is the sample survey. So we are going to study only a part of the population. So the money and the time required is less. Non-sampling error are so much large than the results of the sample survey, so more accurate than those of census survey. That is, if the error relating to non-sampling situation is more, then sampling survey will be better. The non-sampling errors will arise due to a number of factors like inefficiency of field workers, non-response, interviewers, and bias. Errors are likely to grow when the number of units inspected will be increasing. Next is, what are the characteristics of a good sample design? Result in a truly representative sample, which has to give the characteristics of the population. Results in small sampling error. There should not be error due to selection of a wrong methodology of sampling, wrong sampling procedure. It should be viable in terms of funds, money, cost, time, purpose of the research work. The systematic bias has to be controlled in a better way. The results of the sample study can be applied in general for the universe with a reasonable level of confidence. If these characteristics are ensured, then the sample design you have chosen for your research work is good. So it depends upon the selection procedure as well as the nature of the research study. You have to ensure all these points while you decide the sampling technique. So now next is, what is the criteria of selecting a sampling procedure? We have seen different sampling techniques and other things. Now what is the criteria? 1. 2 costs are involved in selecting a sample. Cost of collecting the data and cost of an incorrect inference. If the sample is not correctly selected, your inference will not be correct. Both cannot be sacrificed. You have to make an optimum level. 2 incorrect inferences causes will be there. One is the systematic bias and the other one is sampling bias. Sampling bias arises out of wrong selection of sample. A systematic bias will result from errors in the sampling procedure, which cannot be reduced or eliminated by increasing the sample size, like convenience sampling, judgment sampling. If the person who is taking up the judgment, if he is having a complete knowledge, then his judgment will be correct. If the judgment itself is wrong, then again it will lead to systematic bias. Causes responsible for the errors can be detected and corrected. Systematic bias can be identified and corrected. Now, what are the factors responsible for systematic bias? Inappropriate sampling frame. We have seen what is a sampling frame. There should not be a biased representation of the universe. The sampling frame should be complete in all aspects. Defective measuring device. Measuring device will differ from different things. If there is an error in that, when it is relating to research and survey, it is the questionnaire or the interview. If an essential question is missed, there again the output will be wrong. If the interviewer doesn't understand the topic, questionnaire and the question, there again there will be a problem of systematic bias. Sometimes the respondents are not able to respond. Like in the case of stock market, now many of the people have just entered the stock market under the impression that by way of doing intraday, they will be able to mint money. But reality, they should know the technicalities of the stock market operation. If they are not able to know about those aspects, there again, there will be wrong decisions and that will lead to non-respondent systematic bias. Indeterminacy principle. That is, we are not able to determine how a person reacts under an observed environment and a non-observed situation. Both the case, the same person himself differs. We are not able to determine the character. That case again. Then there is a natural bias in the reporting of the data. This is particularly common in the case of data relating to income, downward or upward. Like, for example, if anyone asks me as what is your salary, based on the person who is asking and the situation where it is being asked, I will either say an higher amount or say a lower amount. If a person is coming to approach me to get a borrow from me, and if I feel that, so naturally I'll say I don't have money. My income is not there like that. So these are what we call as natural bias in reporting the data. All these things will affect the selection of the sampling. So the sampling procedure, or otherwise called as the selection of proper sampling design, will depend on the type of sample, technique of selecting sample item, the procedure of the sample design. For a given sample size, what will be the cost that I'll be incurring? What will be the smallest amount of error? Next is organizing field work. That determines the success of the survey. Sufficient supervisory staff should be there and trained personnel should be there. In the case of a PhD research work, the researcher himself has to carry out. If you are going to get the help of people who will do it for you, the outcome will not be correct. Then, before you go for the final survey, you have to do a pilot survey. That is a pre-testing to see what is the possibility. Try out the research design on a small class before the field work, and that will give you a better idea of practical problems and troubles that might arise. So next is, as we have already seen, sampling and non-sampling error. A knowledge of this is very essential in the selection of a sampling technique. So sampling error arises out of random variation in the sample from the true population parameter. The sampling error will be absent in census survey, and so it will be present only in the case of sampling method. That is why we call it as sampling error. It will be measured for a given sample design, size, and homogeneity. If these three things vary, sampling error also will be vary. The measurement of the sampling error, the exact measure, is what we call as precision of the sampling plan. That is how far our sampling plan is correct. The precision can be improved by increasing the sample size. The precision is usually to select a better sampling design which has a smaller sampling error for a given sample size at a given cost. So always we have to ensure a sample where the sampling error is less. In practice, we prefer a less precise design as it is easier to adopt and systematic bias can be controlled better. So the cause a relatively small sampling error and help to control the systematic bias in a better manner. Statistically, if I have to tell, the population population mean minus sample mean will give you the impact of the sample and not the representing the population. How far the mean of the population and the sample differs. If the difference is more, sampling error will be more. Next is non-sampling error. Arise at the stage of collection, data consolidation, coding, tabulation, computation, sampling frame. This is besides all sampling part. Other thing, front and back, chances of errors is called as non-sampling error. So this is present both in sampling survey and census survey. Remember, sampling error is present only in sample survey, not in census survey, whereas non-sampling error will be present in both. Data obtained in census survey is free from sampling error. However, it is subject to non-sampling error. Non-sampling error can be reduced by defining the sampling units, frame, sample frame, population correctly and by employing efficient people in the investigation. Even the data collecting instrument has to be good to avoid non-sampling error. So by the time exactly I have completed, I've given you a complete idea of sampling technique. Now the time is up to you to ask questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, the presentation and your explanation was very nice, and I'm sure
Thank you.
it is helpful to everyone over here. We have received some questions seeking your answer. With your permission, may I ask you the first one?
Sure.
One of the students asked the question that how to remove bias when we are choosing the individual in non-probability sampling.
Non-probability sampling bias cannot be eliminated. That is why it is discouraged. Unless and otherwise, you have one thing, you have to be unbiased in selection. That way you can reduce. When there is no other go and you are going for non-probability sampling, and once you are technically sound, your subject-wise you are thorough, you are correct, your instrument is correct, and you are approaching people just like that. To an extent, you involve the element of chance. Like, for example, in most of the cases, people, what they do is, they will just distribute the questionnaire to their classmates and ask them to fill. That cannot give you good result. So you have to ensure methodologically a proper way of doing the work and avoid bias. Next question.
Thank you. Another question is that there is a confusion between convenience sampling and purposing sampling. They stated that if we study impact of online shopping on consumer buying behavior, this is the research study. Impact
One
of
minute.
online
I'll first
shopping on
answer. Subha, for 1 minute. I'll first answer the first question, then we'll take up the next part. Difference between convenience sampling and purposive sampling is, purposive sampling is with a purpose orientation. Like, for example, you want to study people now in the COVID environment. You want to study, now you get a lot of news that whether we have to choose COVID shield or the other one. So you just go for the persons who have got injected with regard to the vaccination, and then carry out the study relating to their feedback of how they felt and other things. That is called as purposive sampling. Convenience sampling is just like that. You just give the distribution. This is particularly common in the case of consumer product, brand preference and satisfaction. You just give it and get it. Like in the same way, another example, if you have a locker, if you want to study relating to people who have taken locker facility from bank, you choose customers with locker facility and do, then it is purposive sampling. If you just distribute the questionnaire relating to all the bank customers and do it, then it is convenience sampling. I think now, is it clear?
Yeah, ma'am. Clear, ma'am.
Okay, what is the next part?
In this situation, impact of online shopping on consumer buying behavior. For this research study, a purposive sampling method is a correct sampling method than compared to convenience.
Yes, or no. The 2 points are there. 2 things you have to decide about it. Online shopping. One is, there are people who are doing online shopping only or major part of their shopping online. Another category is, where people who do once in a while or don't do. If your study is going to be on the opinion of online shopping, whether they have done it or not, some people will be against online shopping. So if you are going to study whether it is in favor or against online shopping, then you can go for convenience sampling. If you want to highlight some problems or benefits or about a particular, like Flipkart, Amazon, like that, then you have to go for purposive sampling.
Okay.
If your study is going to be online shopping through Flipkart, through Amazon, then it is purposive sampling.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
If it is general, then convenience sampling.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And last question, ma'am. If we done cross-sectional study, what is the best sampling method we can use?
When it is going to be cross-sectional study and if you are able to define your population, that is a finite population, then stratified random sampling is the best method.
Okay.
Only then there will be representation from everything.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank
That's all
you.
the doubt I received from the students. And I will conclude this webinar. Thank you, ma'am, for the great presentation.
Hello.
And also, hello.
1 minute.
Uh,
1 minute,
hello?
Subha.
Yeah, ma'am.
1 minute,
One
Subha.
question.
1 minute, Subha. I'll just give the feedback link.
Ma'am, 1 minute,
Sure,
ma'am.
ma'am.
One of the student is asking question. 1 minute. Mavish, you can ask.
Hello.
Yes, I'm ready to the answer.
In a
Yes,
quantitative
good afternoon.
method of research. In a quantitative
minute,
method of
ma'am.
research.
Yeah, just a minute. You just tell me your name, whether you're a faculty or a student, and what are your degree you're pursuing, and then tell me the question.
My name is Mavis, a PhD student. Comments.
Good. All the best and good luck for you.
All right, thank you.
Mavish, can you
In
do
a
one thing?
quantitative method of research, where
I'm
we
not
have
able to repeat
secondary data.
Ma'am, 1 minute, ma'am. Mavish, can you do one
Sure.
thing? Post your question in the chat.
Okay.
Then it will be able to view the question because your voice is interpreting. You just post what the doubt
Okay.
you have in a chat box.
Okay.
Subha, you can also tell the question, what she wanted to identify.
Ma'am, actually her voice is interfering, so that's why I asked her to post in chat. She will post it now within 1 minute, ma'am.
No problem. No problem. I'll wait. In a quantitative method of research where secondary data is used like panel data, what method of sampling is most appropriate? Here it is judgment sampling. Because you are selecting a panel where you feel they are capable of answering it. So it is judgment sampling. And it is quantitative data, next secondary data, and panel data. Mostly we go for sampling method more for primary data rather than for secondary data. Anyhow, it is judgment sampling.
Mavish, do you have any other doubt? Just a thank you. Okay, ma'am. Niti, ma'am, are you going to? Ma'am,
Yes,
that's all doubt on our side.
thank you. I thank the organizers and Parul University for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge with the research scholars. In future, any research scholar, if interested, can contact me through Subha. I like to help them. This is an opportunity for me. It is a blessing for me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You have precisely pointed out all the concepts of sampling to be chosen and that need to be exercised for a well-being of research. And I'm sure this is a really value-adding session I hope the research scholars and the MPhil and MCOM students must have accumulated a lot of comprehension about how to frame the sampling for their own research or whatever they are doing, and it will greatly enhance the ease of doing research for the beginners. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really a value adding session.
It is my duty to support the research scholars.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the great presentation and for answering those questions. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. Thank you all. And one important information, in chat, ma'am has posted feedback form. Everyone are requested to fill the form without fail.
Thank you everyone. Thank you. Yeah.